Welcome to From Caving In to Crushing It, the podcast for those who find themselves immersed in adversity and choose to write their story instead of having others write it for them. I'm Drew Durrani, and I'm your host. Stefan, it's great to see you, my friend.
It is great to see you again, Drew. I appreciate the opportunity to have be a guest on your podcast.
Oh, absolutely. And it's an honor for me to have you. And I don't know if it was on a coincidence or what, but I was on a networking thing yesterday for Suzanne Taylor King, and the person who introduced me to you was there. It was Troy Seward. So I always thank the person who introduces me to my guests. So, Troy, thanks for the introduction to Stefan, my friend. I really appreciate it. So I always talk about in the beginning how when we're kids, when we're young, we're taught by the people around us that life is linear. It's a straight path. If we do A plus B plus C, D is going to happen. We listen to it. It's not a malicious teaching. It's what people hope for us. And for the most part, life is linear until it's not. Ultimately, an external circumstance will come out and get in between one of those letters and kind of derail that straight path to a more circuitous one. When that happens, that means adversity has reared its ugly head. And when that happens, most of us, have a choice to make. Do we run away from that adversity or do we face it head on? Now, I always say there's three types of men. Man number one has a ton of blind spots. He doesn't notice that adversity. He just lives life the way he believes he's told he has to live it, and nothing changes. I don't have man number one on this show. Then there's man number two. Man number two notices the adversity, yet he's the victim. He says life's doing this to me, not for me, and he doesn't change a thing in his life because he doesn't think he can. And on his deathbed, he's got a ton of regrets. I don't have man number two on this show. I have man number three on this show, like Stefan Bjes. Man number three has a heightened self awareness. He sees the adversity and he says, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That adversity is not a barrier, that's an opportunity. And I'm a high performer. I'm going to take massive action and become stronger on the other side. So, with that context, Stefan, please reach back as far as you need to for that defining moment, whether it was the tap on the shoulder, the whisper in the ear, or like what I needed, two by four upside my head, that really transformed you from either man one or man number two to the man you are today and how that impacted you personally and professionally.
Looking back that far, I look back at some of the things in my life and realized that there was so much adversity, but I didn't realize that it was adversity. It was just, curveballs that life throws at you, and you just kind of adjusted. But for me, the really defining moments which put me on my path where I'm at today, and there really are two. The first one was 2013. I have three sons, 18, 16, and 14. And in 2013, my two youngest sons were diagnosed with autism.
Oh, okay.
And as my wife and I took on this life-altering diagnosis, um, I didn't take it real well. I will tell you, when my middle son was diagnosed, it was devastating because you think of everything you had planned for your boys as they grow older, going to college, playing sports, getting married. In an instant, sometimes those things you had expected for their lives are, in essence, gone in a heartbeat.
Right.
Um, Same thing with my youngest son when he was diagnosed. Now, my wife took his diagnosis a little bit harder, but I will tell you in the beginning, I really struggled with their diagnosis. Um, my wife, the strong as she is, she took the reins, she took that role on, and set out to be that advocate. It took me a little bit longer to get to that path, but eventually I did.
Mhm.
Um, and then in 2017,
Mhm.
I spent 21 years as a police officer. And in 2017, there was a video that came out of Arizona. And it was a young man with autism who was walking around a local park. His interaction with an officer, and it goes really, really bad. And what it was is his characteristics were misdiagnosed as somebody who being under the influence, and it wasn't. It was characteristics of his disability.
Okay.
And I remember my wife looked at me and said, "You can change this. You can fix this." And that was really the path. I've been a law enforcement trainer. I've been training law enforcement for 15 years in different aspects of the job, whether it was use of force or gangs or all different sorts of things that I did. But this was that moment where I said, I can take some of the skills that I have in being an instructor and put it to being impactful. And I look back at 25 years ago when I went to the police academy, there was no training on disabilities or autism or even really mental health.
Right.
It just didn't really exist. I think I had like an hour training of mental health awareness in the police academy and realizing that it's such a common occurrence in our field as law enforcement is that you're dealing with this and we just were ill prepared.
Right.
And when it came down to disabilities or autism, it really didn't exist. So I put a class together. I did it for my own department because I could be the impactful with the officers that I worked with on a daily
Mhm,
basis.
mhm,
Then another department called, then another department called, then another department called, and about 6,000 first responders later, I'm still doing this anywhere from 3 to 4 times a month where I'm training law enforcement about autism or disabilities, understanding those characteristics and understanding those behaviors,
right.
but even strategies on how to make sure that interaction is successful for that individual, but the officer as well. And for the longest time, we didn't know what we didn't know. And I realized in that moment that I could be that change. I can make that impact and train law enforcement officers across the country so that these interactions don't happen again. And you look and they happen all over the country. And I look
Sure.
at them and I dissect them and realize like, had those officers understood the disability or understood those characteristics or
Mhm.
understood those behaviors, could that have interaction been different? Could that have not been that next viral video that goes where it's criticism of law enforcement?
Right. Right.
And I really do see it from both sides of the fence as a parent and as a former now a retired law enforcement officer. And this is why I've done it. So I created a business and now I go all over the country training, work with a lot of different disability advocate groups like the ARC or the National Autism Association, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children are all organizations that I work with or have collaborated with in projects to kind of spread this message across the country.
That's unbelievable. That whole, all right, there's a lot to unpack here. So I love, thank you for the vulnerability and for the honesty here. And I see the connection, obviously, between the two. Reaching back, I'm thinking about, when and I have three children, and my firstborn has autism, but he wasn't diagnosed till 14. So I had a very different, um, journey as you, because you learned, how old were the two when they were diagnosed?
Uh, my middle son Zach was 4,
Okay.
and Andrew was just over 2 years old.
So 4 and 2. So you were in that boat of, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting this. What's next? Right?
Right.
Because, and then you have people who, well, actually, that the two is very young to be diagnosed for it. So you were really on that cusp of, we're all prepped when we are having children that it's going to be that straight path, right? It's going to be the quote unquote normal or typical path, and we're not prepped for the alternate path. Now, not necessarily to scare us, but it would be nice that to learn what that alternate path might be should something happen, but we're not trained there. And so you have that what's next. Now you mentioned to me about your reaction about the your first boy being diagnosed. What was your reaction with the second?
At that point, I had kind of seen I kind of seen the red flags because we now knew what we were looking for. So
Right.
when his diagnosis came through, I wasn't surprised.
Mhm.
I had already kind of mentally prepared that that diagnosis was coming, where my wife took it that one a little bit harder. And
Right.
it was really the way it was when the boys were diagnosed, like we just handled it differently with different boys, where my wife was the strong one for my middle son, Zach. I was a little bit more of the stronger one for Andrew. But either way, my wife was that trailblazer that pushed
Of
forward and
course.
took that role on and really like charged forward with it and really kind of in the beginning drug me along the path until it
Well,
finally just clicked where like you know I can there's so much that I can do to be able to support my own
mhm,
sons, but to
yeah.
support the community as well.
Oh,
And it was really
absolutely.
that life-changing moment for me where I'm like, I have to be their voice, right?
Right. Absolutely.
I have to be their own, but I have to be their advocate when they can't be. And that was
Hmm.
um, that path that I ended up taking and to be able
Yeah.
to do it. the law enforcement end of it's one part of it in training, but
Right.
there's so many different avenues now that I've taken that more inclusive route, whether it's sports
Right.
or procedures within schools, things like that. Like
Sure.
so many different avenues now that I've
Right.
become, I guess, that advocate for my sons
Right.
as they've grown older.
Right. Well, I have to give credit to you and your wife and the strength of your marriage. And perhaps it was planned by a higher power that one of you was the strong one when one of you couldn't be, and then vice versa, because at least your children had the one strong parent and then the other one caught up for each one. Because I've spoken to so many different parents, and it's rare when both of them are are on the same page as far as being the force. But many times both of them are scared and don't and no and one doesn't take the lead of being proactive, and that hurts the child. So thank goodness, or thank God, or whoever you believe in, that they had a trailblazer parent for each of the kids, and I'm happy to hear that. You know.
Yeah, it was. We in essence we really do complement each other, and like when you have children with disabilities,
Yeah.
the strain on your marriage is very difficult. And then
Right.
throw in the fact that I was a cop for 20, just under 23 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
which adds additional strain. And the fact that we've been married 21 years is the true test to our relationship. And there's been peaks and valleys, but
Oh, of
we
course.
have always worked through them, and we have always. Um, you peak at different times and you're supportive at different times. And it's just like, you talk about that linear path, and
Yeah.
it's definitely not a linear path. And we do those, but we have always pushed through, and we've both really persevered through a lot of challenges in our lives, and to kind of get where we are at today.
That's I'll tell you, it's a wonderful story to hear how tight your family is. Now, the you said the ages of the three children are what now?
So my oldest son is 18. He is my
Okay.
neurotypical one. He is my stereotypical 18-year-old. He's a
Okay.
senior getting ready to graduate, looking at
Okay.
colleges.
Right.
My middle son, Zach, is 16, and my youngest is now 14.
Okay. So your oldest, your 18-year-old. Now, what we often don't talk about is the impact on the sibling who is neurotypical, by having two, atypical, neurodiverse siblings. How how is his upbringing? How did he handle it? How did you guys treat him in a way where it was supportive, and that he could still ask for help? Because I've heard this term called the glass child, which I'd never heard before, but that's the child who's neurotypical, who still goes through your normal aches and pains and stuff, but then is hesitant to mention it to mom and dad because they know that you're going through stuff with the special needs kid and they can break and be very fragile. What was the relationship with the oldest to the younger two, and how did that
It's been
go?
it's been great, and
Yeah,
as a dad, like every dad, wants to coach sports or be there and do all those things,
yeah,
and I made sure that obviously the younger two boys required a significant um, part of our attention, whether it was through
right,
therapies and different things than all the things you go through when you have that autism diagnosis. But
right,
um, as parents, we did our best to support our oldest son as well because things were important to him, whether it
sure,
was sports or academics or, I never missed a season where I could coach him. I never missed a game where I could,
great,
be there for.
sure,
We never missed an event at school. We were always made sure we found that balance so that he didn't feel isolated or
right,
didn't feel like his younger two brothers were kind of, in essence, I don't want to say monopolizing our time, but really
right,
that on the forefront of because they did require so much additional
sure,
um, effort on our part, where
right,
we always found that balance. We always needed a point to be able to get him out one on one with one of us, whether it was my
mm,
wife or me or whatever it was.
mm.
Uh, but also included him in everything that the boys were doing as well, my younger two
Oh,
sons.
that's
So
beautiful. Yeah.
I will tell you with another program that I get involved in is I coach an adaptive soccer program for kids with disabilities.
Oh,
And I
wow.
became involved with it about 8 years ago. It was just a connection through the police department.
Right.
I got, you know, introduced to the guy who was running the program, fell in love with it, enrolled my two boys and began coaching. But all of our kids have a buddy, so a neurotypical peer that will help
That's
assist them
awesome.
with play. So we incorporated my oldest son into work with my youngest son. So my youngest son is like, I want my brother Nate to work with me.
Wow.
So we found ways to incorporate him and being that
Good.
supportive older sibling to his younger brothers as well. So
That's wonderful.
we've
I
tried to
love
find
that.
that balance a little bit.
Yeah, I love that, sir. What part of the country are you in right now?
Chicago.
You're in Chicago. Okay. That's yeah, because we're going to definitely get to the professional piece of your life, but I still want to stick with the personal piece because I am very intrigued about the strength of your marriage. If you were to name one skill that you and your wife have as a married couple that has helped you persevere through all this, what would that skill be that you can share with others? Because I mean, I ended up getting divorced. I probably would have gotten divorced anyway if we didn't have, even if we didn't have a special needs kid because it just wasn't meant to be.
All
But
right.
it would have been different. But I knew it put a strain on our marriage trying to find the diagnosis and all that. So I'm curious, the one strength that you two shared together as a couple.
I think the biggest strength for the two of us is forgiveness. We both make mistakes. We both um,
Mhm.
let other things get in the way, but we've always been able to work through them. And I think we both have, in essence, short memories, right? This is the past. We've overcome this hurdle. Let's move on. Where do we go from here, and how do we strengthen it? So I think that's probably our biggest strength is we've always been able to um, uh, kind of get through those curveballs that life throw at you.
Right.
And we just kind of, it becomes the past. We focus on what's ahead of us and we just move forward. And I think we complement each other in very different ways,
Yeah.
um, where we peak at different times, where, in essence, our expertise is in certain areas,
Hmm.
where I default to her for things, she defaults to me
Right.
for things. And I think the partnership that we have, is our strength, is one of our biggest strengths.
I love that. And you know, what I've seen and hearing this from you is when each partner in the marriage can forgive the other, it makes self-forgiveness a lot easier.
Yes, it
Right?
does.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
I'm telling you. So that's great to hear. So for
Yeah.
you married couple out there who are struggling, take a lesson from Stefan and his wife, please. All right, so let's shift and the boys are doing great now.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, we have our ups and downs, but all as a whole, they're doing great.
All right, throw them three hugs my way, okay?
I I will. I appreciate
All
that.
right. So let's shift into the professional. You were able to take a some challenging moments and rather than keep them all inward and you decided to share and help others. So let's get to I know you said you were doing training. What type of training were you doing in the police force prior to your wife with that defining moment of you can do some good with the training of autism?
So I did a lot of stuff within the police department. So I spent 10 years in our gang unit. So I had a lot of experience with street gangs and gang
Okay.
investigations and things like that. So I actually had the opportunity to kind of go around the country and present on different strategies for gang suppression and gang identification, things like that.
Hmm.
So I had a little bit of background in it. And then in-house, I did a lot of use of force, so defensive tactics, our active shooter protocols,
Okay.
things like that. So I had a background in kind of that public speaking, and I've always kind of had
Hmm.
that public speaking background.
Right.
But when the autism diagnosis came through, and my wife and I watched this video, and she just looked at me really calmly. She's like, "You can fix this." She's like,
Right.
"You've been doing this for how long?" She's like, "You can put a class together." In essence, you would be the default expert because
Yeah.
nobody else has that expertise in both sides of that fence is
Exactly.
lived experience and then in that field.
Right.
And there was some training out there from autism, but like when you have a social worker or a speech pathologist or a therapist coming in to tell a bunch of cops, like, hey, this is what you need to do when you're dealing with somebody with autism, you don't have that buy-in, right? Cops are
Right.
the hardest audience you will ever train or
Mhm.
ever teach anything
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
in the world. Because we're so like, who's this guy? What does he know about doing the job? Well, I did the job kind of, so I walked the
Right.
walk a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was always really good at kind of putting it in perspective of a law enforcement interaction and
Right.
said, like, how are you handling this? Or how are you handling a domestic? Or how are you handling this? Or I know how we do this job, and here's what you're gonna, identify this as, but
Right.
here's what it's not to, and here's what to look for.
Okay.
So having that both sides of that fence has been really beneficial in the fact that
Yeah.
I can talk to both sides of this.
Speaking of both sides, is it safe to say that there were some police officers who welcomed this training and some who were initially resistant and then realized afterwards, thank you, Stefan, for doing this? I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, I get a lot of that
Okay.
because I get like I almost start every class with like, oh great, we're gonna do 8 hours of autism training. This is awesome. I like it's like sarcastically, and
Right.
I'm like, I get it. I said, but when we're done today, he's like, you'll understand how impactful it is. And I've had, when I first started doing this training, occasionally I would have an officer come up to me at the class and be like, oh, I have a son with autism, or I have a niece or
Hmm.
nephew. It was rare. Now, almost every single class I have somebody come up to me
Hmm.
and say, I have a son, I have a daughter. And I've been doing this long enough where I've trained officers,
Yeah.
and 2 years later, I'll come back in for a refresher training, and the officer will be like, listen, he goes, I sat through your class 2 years ago, and everything you said, characteristic wise, described my son. He's like, and I didn't know.
Wow.
He's like, so from when you were here the last time to where you're here today, he goes, we received our diagnosis. He's like, but
Wow.
I had no clue what I was looking at. And I've had that in more than one occasion where I've had
Wow.
officers come up and be like, you just described my kid, my son, my daughter.
Hmm.
And I didn't know that until sitting through this, and now we've received our diagnosis. So in that impactful that maybe that child received an early diagnosis and gets those services earlier, and some things are put in place and gets
Right.
that support that's needed, um, is great. And so I get it a lot. But yes, most cops are like, this is great. And I've had some cops that are like disengaged, but I have other cops that were like this was impactful. This was in essence life changing. Like I look at things so much differently now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you're not gonna
and
be able to reach
that's,
everybody, but the ones you can reach, that must make you feel proud.
yeah, it's an awesome feeling. And to know that maybe somewhere down the road, I have really changed the outcome of a negative interaction, right? Maybe that officer, one officer out of the
Yeah.
thousands I've trained says, man, I remember this from this training. I think this is something different. Let's shift our tactics.
Mm.
And you'll never know whether you prevented
No.
a negative interaction from happening.
Yeah.
Um, but it's maybe somewhere down the road, and the hope is, and why I do it on a daily basis or pretty regularly, is that those officers that you never hear anything about, right? Those
Right.
interactions that go great that you never hear anything
Yeah,
about
you
is what
don't
I'm
hear about
wanting them.
those. We should,
And
but yeah.
that's what, and if I don't hear another, if I never heard or saw another negative interaction that happened between law enforcement and our disability community,
Yeah.
then that's great. If I don't hear
Absolutely.
anything, that's awesome. That's
Right,
what I
I
want to.
get it. I get it. But I still remember when we were growing up, at the end of every news program, they would do a feel-good story. And wouldn't it be nice to have that nowadays where there's a feel-good story about a police officer,
Yeah.
servicing and helping and all that. Now, I know you have a story that's good. Refresh my memory. Wasn't there a story where you went with officers to a home and there was a sign on the front?
Yeah. So I've had a few of those. So what we
Remember
used to
that
do,
one?
like a lot of what we would do is, um, more than training, at least from my own department where I
Yeah,
worked, I wanted to create like an autism outreach program. So
right,
much more than training, but like build
right.
that relationship.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did is we issued out like window clings for our families with
Okay.
loved ones with a disability. So when the
Right.
officers arrived on scene, they could look at this window cling on the front door and be like, wait a minute, there's somebody with a disability here. Let's shift
Wow.
our tactics, how we do this. Or now we know what we're interacting with.
Okay.
And we've had multiple incidents where officers arrive thinking we're getting called there for a violent domestic, and we turn out it's not. It's just a child with autism that's going through what we call a meltdown, right? Just
Right,
that
right.
complete loss of behavioral control, and it really just shifts the tactics.
Uh-huh.
So we've had several incidents where the officers have just realized that's what it was, and potentially, averting a negative interaction.
Right, right.
One specific story I had, it was after I retired. We had a family that we had worked with a little bit in my community. And I remember with my officers, because I retired as a patrol sergeant. So the officers that I supervise, a lot of those guys have now been promoted to detective or now are sergeants themselves. And
Right.
I remember a couple years, this is probably about a year ago, I got a call from one of the officers that I supervised, but he was now a sergeant. And they were responding to a house that we had been to multiple times.
Right.
And I remember being at the house too. And they
Mhm.
had an 18-year-old son with autism. He could be very aggressive and violent, and would get triggered. So when the fire department would respond, the fire department was like, we almost always have to sedate him. because we can't control him. It's
Um,
combative.
right.
And I remember the sergeant walked in and the kid was kind of back in his bedroom, pretty agitated. And he realizes that the kid's got baseball stuff all over his bedroom.
Mm,
And the sergeant at the time is like, we'll play college baseball. So Will just started talking about baseball. It
right.
immediately changed the dynamics of that interaction because,
Wow.
and I always tell everybody, it's the power of distraction, right? If you
Yep.
know that preferred interest or restricted interest and you can capitalize on that, it diverts them from the crisis. And that's exactly what he did. He's like, oh, this kid loves baseball. Let's talk about baseball. And within 15 minutes, he's like, hey, are you ready to go to the hospital? He's like, yeah, sure, I'll go. He walked out and walked right into the ambulance. And Will called me that morning. He's like, "Oh my God," he goes, "It worked." And I'm like, "What worked?" I'm like, "What are
Oh,
you
that's
talking about?" He
awesome. Oh
explained through the
my
story, and
God.
he goes, "I just remembered you were saying it's like that power of distraction. And I picked up on like his preferred interest and
That's
used that as
awesome.
a de-escalation strategy." It was just a wonderful story that he shared with me. And I was long retired when Will called me, and I still
Right.
had a great relationship with those guys, and they still call me. He goes,
Right.
"But it was awesome." He goes, and the fire department was even like, "How did you do that?" Like that was some magic wand, and it wasn't. It was just he slowed things down. He
That's
used
amazing.
some of that understanding of his disability, understanding of what his interests were, and used that power of distraction to distract him from the crisis. And it was
That,
just a great interaction.
that is awesome.
And even the fire department were like, "Man, we never come here where we don't have to like sedate him to get him to the hospital." And it was just he walked right in voluntarily. It was it's a great
Ah,
story. So when you hear stuff like that,
yeah.
that's when you know you're being impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a story that there's somebody else who I've interviewed who and I don't know if he was a police officer, but he did training for disabilities too. And he told me a story that he went with police officers to a home. There was a for sale sign on the front of the house. And when they went in, it was a mother and it was like an 18-year-old young man with autism and similar scenarios what you talked about. But when they were leaving, the woman asked the police officer for a hug. And he's like, well, sure, but why do you? She goes, because I was going to sell this home because I really can't afford it, but there's no other neighborhood where the police officers would have treated my son like that. So I'm going to pull that sign off once you guys leave. And I thought that was such an impactful. I got to find out who that was who told me that story.
Troy.
What's that?
That was Troy.
Was that Troy? That
It was
was
Troy.
Troy. You're
It was
right. It was
Troy.
Troy Seward. That
It was
story
Troy.
was Troy.
Yeah, that was
That
Troy.
was, yeah, that I love that story. That's right. It
Yeah,
was Troy. Yeah, good. Okay, and it's Troy's the one who introduced me to you. So okay,
right.
not surprised. So I love that story. So both those stories are awesome, and you can tell how when you have an open-minded individual at a training course, they don't know what's going to stick, but thing that you said about distraction, that's stuck in that one officer's mind, and that is very powerful.
Yep. And that's the goal of it, right? Is having that one thing that sticks or is impactful and that one strategy that might
Hmm.
change the dynamics of an interaction is so important.
Absolutely.
Or, in a big area that I do address quite a bit is the wandering and elopement portion of autism because
Mhm.
um, it's it's significant. And we know our individuals with autism are like 50% more likely to wander from a safe environment,
Hmm.
home, schools, things like that. And
Hmm.
you know, I follow this very, very closely, but with fatalities that occur in children with autism and wandering elopement events, like 92% of them drown. And it's that attraction to water
Mm.
that's so significant.
Wow,
And
I
it's an
didn't know
area
that.
that I work
Yeah.
with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It's an area that I'm very involved with as well.
Okay.
And training those officers, and we've had officers that have gone, man, they're like, I went right to the body of water, and the kid was standing at the front of the retention pond, or the kid was just starting to go in,
Mm.
or um, you know, those are those things that are impactful with it because you're now saving lives. Uh,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
before I started understanding the disability, I didn't know that it was a thing. And most officers didn't know that was a thing, that there's a strong attraction to water. And these
Hmm.
kids, I'm not understanding those lack of consequences. Like, I love water. I want to go play in the water, but I can't swim. And
Mm.
I mean, it is the statistics over the past, even 2024 and 2025 are staggering. We're averaging like almost 7 children a month with autism that are drowning
Unbelievable.
across the country, and it's up over the past 2 years. So it's another area that I'm really passionate about and kind of understanding that, and
Yeah.
even being involved in a
Yeah.
school district now,
Right.
a safety security end of it. Like the first day of school, we had a 5-year-old with autism that went into a retention pond. So I mean, it's a very regular thing. So spreading that educational component is really, it's in essence could be life saving in some
It
instances.
absolutely can be. Wow, I didn't realize that about the water. And I mean, my son's 23. We did. he was able to learn how to swim, and he does have an attraction to water, but thankfully he's able to swim. And so, yeah, the individuals who aren't able to learn how to swim, that is something scary. That thank you for
Yes.
letting us know that. Well, certainly the audience has captured the essence of Stefan Bjes, and they're going to want to get in touch with you, my friend. Everybody, Stefan told me that his website's the best way to get in touch with him. That'll be in the show notes, but it's Blue Line, BLUELINE, spectrumsafety.com. So you can reach Stefan through his website. Is there anything else I missed or we didn't talk about that you will find impactful for the audience that you want to mention?
I think one of the things, and it's the same lessons that I push to my own sons. Um, Life is not fair, right? It's not,
Right,
and it is never going to go the way you want it to.
right.
There will always be uh, curves in the road, or bumps in the road, or roadblocks in front of you, and you can shut down and, in essence, play the victim, or you can find a way to overcome those obstacles. Um, and persevere, because every time you address one of those roadblocks or curves or bumps in the road, it makes you stronger as a man.
That's beautiful.
It's one of those areas, especially with all three of my boys, that I push that forward. Like, things are not going to be easy. And if you're waiting for somebody to hand you something, it is never going to happen. You have to go
Right.
and control your own destiny, and be impactful. One of the biggest things with I've always said it with my boys and my wife too, as well, is do something with your life where you can make an impact, where you
Yeah.
can make a difference.
Right.
If you change 10 people's lives for the good, and those 10 people change 10 people in theirs,
Mhm.
and so on and so on and so
Right.
forth. Look how you're impacting those 10 people, how much that is spread across the world.
That's
And
right.
so even impacting 10 people, which when you think of it, is a pretty small number.
Hmm.
But if everybody impacts 10 people or makes a difference or has that impact on them, how much change you can actually make. So whatever you decide to do in life,
Yeah.
be impactful, make a difference. And when you have a mission or a cause, um, don't stop. Like, you will hit obstacles, you will hit roadblocks, you'll be told no your entire life,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. People are going to tell you no. So,
Yeah.
but don't stop, persevere, and push through it. And every adversity you experience in life is going to make you stronger.
All right. I know it's awesome. Awesome message to the audience. Two final questions. Now, the first question I'm going to ask you, I don't know if you'll have the same answer to what you just said, but let's say you're in your happy place where you like hanging out and you're sitting down with 7 to 10-year-old Stefan Buys and you want to give him advice about life. What would you tell him?
Um, I think one of the biggest things I would tell myself at 7 to 10 is, um, savor every moment,
Mm,
because life goes very, very fast. And you'll look back and blink and realize that, where did 25 years go? Or where did 30 years go?
mm,
Um, don't be so lost in the end result that you miss the ride. And I think that was one of the biggest things for me, is like,
huh.
I was so in many years I was so hyper focused on my career and
Yeah.
different things, where sometimes I just didn't take a stop and take a look around and enjoy the moments. And as I've gotten older, I realized that those moments are probably the most impactful thing you'll have. So,
Yeah.
stop and enjoy the ride. Like,
Okay.
don't focus on everything that's ahead of you and how do I get to the next goal or how do I
Mm,
accomplish this. Like, sometimes savor what you've accomplished and
right.
enjoy the things that are the most important, like your family, your kids.
Yeah.
Like, I blink, my oldest is 18, he's looking at college, and I feel like yesterday he was taking his first steps in the
Yep.
kitchen. So it
Absolutely.
it goes very, very fast, but
It does.
enjoy the ride and savor those um, impactful moments, because they're gone very, very quickly, and you'll look
Yeah.
back at it. Don't miss them. Don't be
Very
so
true.
focused on certain things that you miss those amazing opportunities.
So true. Wow. You hit me there. Yeah, enjoy the ride. All right, let's switch gears. Now you're sitting down with young Stefan, the young entrepreneur, young businessman. You want to give him advice about business. What are you going to tell him?
Um, Take the plunge. I think that's one of the biggest things, is like, starting a business is scary, right?
Hmm.
Because you're worried, like, am I going to fail? And truthfully, you probably will.
Yeah.
Like that's just part of it. Not every business is a success. Not every business is going to go the way you planned it.
Right.
Be adaptable, right? Change things. If it's not working, fix it. And don't give up. Like people get really disheartened very, very quickly about running their own business.
Right.
Um, and they're into it for a little bit and say, this isn't going to work, and I cave it in. Don't, because you will have ups and downs, but
Yeah.
stay the course.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to adapt as things change. And it's a really important thing. Like I never had any intention of ever starting a business when I started training. It really was never the case. I'm like, I
Right.
don't want to get paid for this. And
Right.
people are like, your time isn't free, dude. Like your time's not free.
That's
And not saying you're trying to make a
yeah.
fortune off of this, but like
Right.
um, you have a level of expertise that most people don't have, and
Right.
people will pay you to come and make sure their officers, their dispatchers, their firefighters are prepared for these incidents. They're like,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with running a business and making a living off of this as
Very
well.
true. Very true.
So I mean, in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie, I felt guilty. Like, oh no, I'll just go to a department and I'll do it,
Yeah.
whatever. And people are like, you're crazy, like you're nuts, don't do that. Um, and and so that was one of the biggest things. But I'm like, and find that level of expertise or something you're passionate about and run with it. And if you can turn it into a business, that passion will push you forward through some of those obstacles that you'll have.
Beautiful. Beautiful advice, my friend. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Stefan. I want to thank you for being the man you are, and you're a wonderful human being. You're doing some awesome things to help people. Keep doing it, man, and good luck to your family. Lots of love, and you take care of yourself.
Drew, I appreciate the opportunity to be on with you. Thank you for all that you're doing, in so many areas that you're being impactful too.
Thank you, sir. Everybody out there, please take care of yourselves. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.